Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and the Monster Fighters Haunted House is back. Sort of. This is the Creator 3-in-1 Haunted Mansion, and it clearly is meant to be a slightly smaller and more playscale sized remake of the original Monster Fighters Haunted House, which is one of the most iconic LEGO sets of all time in my opinion. You also have the option to rebuild it into the Ghost Train, which also was a Monster Fighter staple, and if you look at the phenomenal minifigures in this set, they all are callbacks to the original Monster Fighters theme, so I think this is awesome. It is really cool to see Creator 3-in-1 basically remaking a classic set from 2012, so let's jump into this set right now. Alright, this is the brand new LEGO Creator 3-in-1 Haunted House. It retails for $90 or 90 euros and comes with 736 pieces. It's set number 31167, and if it looks familiar, well, that's for a reason. This is actually a callback to a classic LEGO set. I mean, I say classic, but that was really like 2012, and that was the Monster Fighters Haunted Mansion, which was considerably larger than this. It had a full-on interior, it was a direct-to-consumer set, but this is kind of like the miniature counterpart. Now, there are a couple of things about this that I really want to dive into, and obviously, I have to get it out of the gate. This is nowhere nearly as big as the other Haunted Mansion. It's actually not even close. At 736 pieces, this is basically a miniature version of that original set. And it is really interesting to see LEGO actually try to come back and do this again, especially because it is a theme that LEGO hasn't really referenced in a very long time, and I honestly was shocked to see this actually come back as a LEGO item. Now, the original set 10228 Haunted Mansion retailed for $180 back in 2012, and it came with 2,064 pieces. So any point of comparison between those two is honestly not even that useful because this is just so different. It's almost easier to treat this as its own thing, while clearly it is a homage to the original set. So, I want to jump in and actually take a look at what this set has to offer, and I'm going to say it out of the bat. This set is $90, and honestly, that is pretty high for what you get. 736 pieces is admittedly a good amount of parts, but after you actually have it fully built, I would say from this angle it looks the most impressive and large, but it's also very, very narrow from this angle. And really, the way that the house is fully enclosed is when you actually either bend all of the different side components up to be fully a box, and that just feels very small to me. I definitely feel like this should have been closer to $70 or $80, but then again, it does introduce a ton of brand new minifigures, one of which even has a brand new mold, which I'm sure LEGO is going to use more in the future, so I'm sure a lot of the budget went into that as well. Starting off with the main house, as I mentioned, you can fully close it up to actually be a fully enclosed house, and that is one thing I do like about the set, is that you actually can make it more than just a facade. This is what it looks like when it is fully enclosed, and you can see it is pretty compact, very, very narrow, but obviously there are all sorts of different knobs and levers and bits hanging out of the side, which encourage you to actually turn stuff around on the inside and change some of the motion. Some of this is not visible from the outside, but some of it is, and I actually do appreciate how they made an effort to actually have some interesting play features factored into the build here, which we'll take a look at in a second. When it is fully enclosed though, it does end up feeling very small. That being said, it does have a fairly detailed interior, especially given the amount of space they had to work with, plus some play features which I mentioned earlier. Turning this knob on the side of the wall will actually allow you to swing the pendulum of the clock back and forth. It's a feature that honestly didn't even really necessarily need any sort of function to actuate, but they just added it in because they could, which is really cool to kind of make it feel haunted, like everything's moving by itself. Although I guess a clock would have to move by itself anyway, so is that really that scary? Moving onwards, we have a couple of printed elements, which was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one, showcasing the Haunted Mansion as well as the Vampire Bride on the side there, which is super cool. You have a couple of hats, which I don't really know what these are supposed to reference in particular. Like, it feels time cruisers-y to have just hats on display, but I guess you would just have that in an old haunted mansion anyways. You've got a center organ in the middle of the mansion with no really easy way to access it once it's fully opened up. Kind of reminds me of that Epic Universe Dark Ride, which has like Frankenstein playing the organ, but there's like nothing around it. And here we have my personal favorite play feature of the set, which is this little ghost hiding a ruby behind it. The ruby itself could be a reference to like LEGO Adventures, or it could just be some sort of treasure or trinket, but the trick is, you can see the ruby through the window, so if you want to try to get it yourself, Just wait, once you spin the gear, a ghost will appear guarding the ruby and it's peeking out at you, which I think is super fun. It's really cool to kind of make it look like the ghost is looking back and forth, peeking at someone from the outside, and it's just a really cute and clever play feature that just adds a lot of charm to this set. There's a couple of cool details on the outside of the set as well, including this graveyard over here, a couple of gravestones tilted at certain angles, and on the other side we have a man-eating tree, which is a callback to the original Monster Fighters werewolf set, which had a tree come alive, and this is actually the spot that actually, when you build it, you build the werewolf alongside it, so it clearly is a reference to that. The vine hanging on the side could even be a reference to the swamp monster, and altogether, this feels like a really cool celebration of the Monster Fighters 2012 theme, a theme that doesn't really get a lot of love from LEGO nowadays. Altogether, I actually really like a lot of the details here, but honestly, there really isn't that much going on when it comes to the actual build of the mansion itself. It's a very simple build. A lot of the earlier cool techniques from the original Haunted Mansion, like the window panes and shutters hanging off the blinds, are just not present here because obviously it is a much smaller scale. So while I like it for what it is, and while it's really cool to get a callback, I definitely feel like I wish that this was a bit bigger and more meaty for the price. Either charge $70 for this, which I feel like would have been very fair, maybe 75 tops, and you have like a pretty small mansion, all things considered, but you know, it's a good thing for kids to play with, or go all out, make this a more expensive set, or at least try to justify that $90 price budget. Because as of right now, this does end up feeling a little overpriced to me, which is a bit unfortunate because Creator 3-in-1 is typically pretty well priced. But before we wrap up my thoughts on the set as a whole, let's take a look at all of the minifigures. First off, we have the vampire bride here, and I really love how she's using the LEGO video moving hair recolored in black. I think that is a really cool design for this character, and definitely one of the coolest design aspects that really makes her stand out. I also like how she's clearly meant to kind of tie into the Fright Night CMF, the Basil the Batlord one, where she has the same design with the glowing eyes on one side, and then a more neutral expression on the other, and that's also partially probably why we don't get a regular vampire in this set. He's probably supposed to pair up with this set, as that's his bride, and then the regular vampire you're supposed to use is the one from the CMF with Basil the Batlord. The Ghost, on the other hand, is one of my most interesting characters here because it is introducing a brand new mold for the Ghost Shroud. They've actually redesigned it for this set, although I'm sure we're going to get it in the future, with a little pin on the top of the head to allow you to stick things on the top, a slightly different shape of the mouth, and yes, it is glow in the dark. The werewolf, on the other hand, is actually remarkably similar to the Monster Fighters counterpart. It's even using the exact same mold for the head, which I'm honestly kind of surprised to see is still around, but they've used it in the past 5 years for a couple of other figures, so I guess that makes sense. The werewolf himself is a very traditional design. You have the red and black checkered shirt, which is an iconic one, with sand blue jeans, and I would say out of all the minifigures, this is the closest to the one that actually appeared originally, save for Frankenstein's monster here, where, as you can see, you have a very similar, if not the same exact head mold being used for Frankenstein's monster, a brown color of coat. It feels very much like a just slightly more modern reimagining of what that original minifig looked like, and if you can see, there is just basically only one facial expression, because you can kind of see the back of the head on the back. Finally, to complete the set, we have a skeleton, and there is nothing really special about this skeleton. He's holding a lantern, and I do find it interesting how I guess he is utilizing that like Ninjago 2011 skeleton arm, which allows you to grip a weapon sideways, or in this case, hold the lantern the way it's supposed to be. So you have two different options for the arms. Altogether, with the 5 exclusive minifigures, I definitely do understand how they arrived at the $90 price point, but it still just feels a bit too expensive. I think $80 would have been the perfect sweet spot for something like this, especially because it does have the new minifigs, and I know I was saying the build feels like a $70 build to me, but with all the new figures, I can see this at $80, but $90 is a bit much. So I'm a bit mixed on this set. I like it that LEGO is going back to Monster Fighters, one of my personal favorite themes growing up, and I guess I was even a little bit past when I was like a younger kid playing with LEGO, but it hit at the right time for me. I loved the sets, and you can even rebuild the set into a ghost train, which references the ghost train from Monster Fighters. So there's all sorts of different things you could do with it. I like it for what it is. I would love to see LEGO like bring back Monster Fighters or do their own original horror style of theme. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again though, so for now, I like this as it is as a Creator 3-in-1 sub-theme set. That's all I have to say about this one. Let me know in the comments, do you see people wanting Monster Fighters to come back? Would you love to see LEGO bring that back? Or do you think it fits best as a seasonal offering? I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for tuning in, and be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Bye for now.